against the forces of material desire, against the forces of comfort and peaceful living. It's like a voluntary austerity. Why should I do this? Is the question that nowadays leaders will always ask themselves, because everybody is weak internally, personally, especially in Kali Yuga. So why would I do this? This is a great aspect of noblemen and kshatriyas of that order. That yes, I should do this. Why? For the sake of people. For the sake of the people. Because they have to be led properly. And I protect them from any such attack that will actually spoil their faith in the instructions of the Lord, in the pursuit of the goal of human life. So the business of a kshatriya is to protect the people. Not only physical protection so that they'll not come and conquer you and hit you and do that, etc., which is also mentioned here. But actually to protect the people so that they can execute their Krishna consciousness. And that comes at various levels. That is the deep inside core value which needs to be protected. But outside that is the covering of the community of people, of the fabric of social structure, the varnashrama system, interrelationships, interactions, and jointly all coming on a common ground of executing their service to Vishnu. Yajño vai Vishnuhu, yajñartat karmano anyatra loko yam karma bandhana. This particular activity, that is very dependent on a social structure. So all these have got strong scientific reasons. And the Kshatriya's duty is also to protect that varnashrama, and everybody is doing his proper duty. And they are being held responsible. And if there's anybody committing a wrong of a particular type and repeatedly doing so, then he's punished. That's all the king's business. And if he has to be able to punish somebody's wrongdoing, he must not himself be a wrongdoer of any sort, for that matter, because he'll become disqualified from meting out punishment. See, judge not that ye may not be judged. You hear that in the Christian theology. If you want to be a judge, you better be above any suspicion of any sort. So these are all the responsibilities that come with leadership. And here Dhruva Maharaj is going off that. So his leadership is in question, and the whole world gets affected by it. So strategically, all of the big leaders have decided that the best thing is to have his grandfather go and speak to him. And Dhruva Maharaj, at that point of time, while he is ruling, and in this position of anger against his brother dying and revengeful attitude, being a Kshatriya, holding power over people. When you exercise the power in a particular way that is harmful for the future, harmful for dharma, harmful for setting an example, then descendants like Swayambhuva Manu, they come to address that you are a king. I am very proud of you being a king because you're my son's son. But my dear grandson, this is wrong, what you do. Although he is Dhruva Maharaj who has seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right now, that is not important. Right now, what's important is you don't go off track in your execution. So quite often, when we assume that we are Krishna conscious, or we assume that we have discovered the real truth of life, when we assume that we have got the wealth of Krishna consciousness, there is a very subtle trick in the world of Maya that we feel we can do anything. Why? I possess Krishna consciousness. I know. I have knowledge. I have, poised. I am all poised and set to be successful in the human goal of life. So that sometimes makes you feel that you have, or you can assume, power in certain ways over people. And that could be wrong. So, there's a saying called power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So these are all absolute power positions, being the emperor of the whole world in those times. Because the emperor obviously knows his duty is to lead everybody to Krishna consciousness. And when such a person with absolute power over the whole range of people under him, that anytime he can punish somebody, anytime he can save somebody, and he's got almost supreme power, because that is the meaning of a king, an emperor. He's called Naradeva, as good as God. God has invested in him, Krishna has invested in him the potency, power, ruling Shakti, Shasana Shakti, that he will handle it properly. The more you become purified in consciousness, the more you become conscious of the Lord, the greater responsibility of a more subtler type you can take. And these are subtle responsibilities, much softer responsibilities, but they are very deep. They need that you have very good knowledge, very deep realization, and you execute them in the material plane with deep roots in understanding. So here, Dhruva Maharaj is being told there is an excess. You're being pulled up for excesses in your ruling, especially in your judgment about what type of punishment you should mete out to the whole race of Yakshas. So Prabhupada talks about excesses. For one person, instead of punishing one person, why you punish the entire clan? Why you punish the entire clan? That is something wrong. If one person from a community does something wrong, we don't have to blacken the whole community. We don't have to say, all you people are like this. Therefore, all of you deserve this. This is what Hitler did. Jewish people. He had a whole fetish in his system that all these fellows had to be killed. Exceeding human beings are not to be judged on the basis of their community they belong to alone. That parochial loyalty that they have towards belonging to one community. And all sorts of communities. To give you as an example, I belong to the Black American community, which is so much under the radar and scanner now because of racist, prejudiced attitudes toward. Or I belong to the Jewish community. I'm a Jew. And they have a whole history of suffering, which comes part and parcel along with them and in their whole psyche. And judging them according to their community, judging them according to individual personalities. All these things are things that we automatically do under the influence of material nature. We put people into slots in our head. We put people into compartments. We quickly judge them simply based on these external peripherals. What do you do? What's your job? Oh, you're an IT. Oh, you're a janitor. Oh, you're a cleaner. Oh, your father is a farmer. Oh, you are, working in this way. Oh, you work from home and you do your own business. Oh, you're a housewife. Oh, you get to, and it is natural. I'm not saying this, but then we extrapolate that into more things that may not be necessary. It may not be necessary, especially today in Kali Yuga, where that's why people are clamoring for inclusiveness. That especially in the younger generation, the postmodern youth, I like that quality of inclusiveness. But just that inclusiveness needs a little more education on the fact that we're not being inclusive only on the basis of matter and material stuff. We're also being inclusive mainly on the basis of everybody being spirit souls. Prabhupada called it spiritual communism. He called it spiritual communism. So here Swayambhu Manu is coming forward to highlight these things to Dhruva Maharaj. In leadership, it's a leadership problem here. That if you have this Bhinna Drishti, differentiated view of people, which Krishna, Pratak Bhavam, he explains that people in the mode of passion will see each differently. A king should simultaneously see difference and oneness. That is the reality, not black and white in the world of relativity. Like I told you, Dvandva Moha. He should be able to see oneness, and he should be also able to see diversity and take it up accordingly. And they should be blended so nicely. This is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya also. That he should be able to see a person as not belonging to the path of dharma when he performs a particular activity that rebels against the laws of nature, against Krishna's instructions in the Bhagavad Gita, against dharma as such. And then he separates himself. You're punished for not being part of Krishna's instructions and executing something very different that is harmful. Then you see him separately. But for spiritual life and for giving everybody opportunities, we see everybody equally. There may be small differences here and there, right? So Krishna is saying that in the Bhagavad Gita also, that Ubhayorapi drishto antasto anayos tattva darshibihi. To be able to see truthfully. It's not an easy thing to be a leader as Dhruva Maharaj occupying that particular position. We must really know that. Don't look at Dhruva Maharaj, oh, he made a mistake. How is it possible that a pure devotee can make a mistake, etc., etc.? And the material world, even if you don't make a mistake, it will become, seen and perceived in a particular way also. There are many things that happen. It's very complex. Mama Maya Duratyaya means not an ordinary statement. It's not at all easy to execute devotional service, keep up purity, and be in a leadership position while in the material world. Prabhupada said he said he held his head like this and said, it's such a thing to establish a spiritual organization in the material world and try to manage is such a difficult job. Such a difficult job. So it is like that in previous times also. All the leaders were challenged with these type of things, and sometimes they descended into some other type of activity. So everybody constantly needs to be Krishna conscious. That is the only way. And not that Dhruva Maharaj was not Krishna conscious. He was, and it's possible that you may drift a little bit. But since you're protected by the Lord, you will always be advised, influenced, inspired to get back. So, like I always mention, our real life is not that it is a straight line full of paka, discipline, and execution. But our life, it's an average straight line. It's filled with meandering like a river. Here, there, and cut off here and there, finally you reach the ocean. Rivers don't flow straight unless they're actually man-made canals. In man-made operations, in our relative world, we always expect that everything is straight. Everything is black and white. Everything is day and night. Everything is right and wrong. But you have an average position, a sum total position that is straight. In average, it is straight. So even a pure devotee like Dhruva Maharaj, we must understand that it's quite possible that this would happen. Kaunteya pratijanahi name bhakta pranashyati. Declare it boldly, Arjuna, that my devotee never perishes. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigachyati. Is very soon he will put himself. Why? The main stuff is He is fixed on the goal of Krishna consciousness. So this little wandering here and there and meandering will not really affect him much. This doesn't mean that Krishna is giving us license to go on and do anything you want because you've already become my devotee. No. A devotee is not interested. He's not interested really. He has no juice for it. He has no taste for it. But sometimes by the wave of Maya, some things can get bewildered and we may make wrong decisions. But the amazing thing Krishna is saying, it may happen to my devotee, but Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigachati. Very soon he'll reinstate himself. It is programmed into him. Even I don't need to actually tell him anything much. It's programmed into him that he will correct himself immediately. So it is not an ordinary fall down. It is not something that he will stop believing in Krishna and the absolute truth and get back into the world and the relative world or anything. Never. One is fixed on the absolute truth. You will see he will never waver. So this little diversion of Dhruva Maharaj should be seen like that, because that is the reality in this world. The reality in this world is that we are not straight, perfectly straight. And if you are perfectly straight, I will also be very worried, because I will wonder, oh my gosh, you have to be sometimes too mechanical, too inhumane, too materialistic to be so heavily disciplined that you don't waver even this. It's too artificial for the human being. It's too artificial for the soul. So sometimes people have a problem accommodating Dhruva Maharaj's diversion in the whole span of pure devotional service that is portrayed to us. It's perfectly all right, and that's what Krishna is saying. The challenge is how we understand and execute devotional service. It's got not sharp edges. Those sharp edges are all smoothened, and the reality should be accepted. So very idealistic understanding, very, rigid understanding. All that gets challenged when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Lord accommodates various different types of devotees in various situations, but recognizes and honors their devotion and their determination and their attraction and attachment to Him, which becomes the main criterion for devotional service. Another interesting point here is Prabhupada speaking here about excesses and how, for the sake of one person, others are being killed, and it happens often in this material world. It's so common. It's so common. I was touching upon this earlier, that we can immediately persecute somebody, persecute a whole community on the basis of one person's activity or one person's thought. See, the people of this world, the bulk of them don't really think for themselves. They need somebody to think, and they're willing to follow. And there is a lot of a mob mentality that one person does the thinking and everybody follows. Nobody checks whether this person can be followed, whether he can be trusted to be able to make decisions on his own. That's why, normally speaking, people had council of ministers and they pressed the power down and made it more lateral. To have this vertical thing in Kali Yuga is being questioned a lot. Depending on the monarchy, depending on one person like Parikshit Maharaj, one person like Dhruva Maharaj, to span the entire, world of people and take decisions is no more the case. There's no more the case. In history, you will see that they had enough of learning from history. If you look at history from the time of, very nicely described in the beginning in the 12th canto of Bhagavatam, it describes the history of great kings, and there's mention about Chandragupta Maurya, Indian kings, and there's mention of Kautilya, who's Chanakya Pandit, And there's mention of even Ashoka, I think, and his great rule. But actually, all of them are not considered to be great kings because they couldn't lead human society towards the absolute truth. Dashu Prayeshu, they are called low-class dictators and people who wanted to, just have material position. And if you look at history, you'll see it's bloody history of people marauding, gangs of people and barbarians coming and killing and slaughtering people. Everywhere in world history, you will see, especially in Western history, that people fight and kill each other. And in later times, you will see, if you look into the history of Roman Empire, their whole business was to master the art of war. Everybody inside the empire was right from his teenage and young age trained to be warriors. And if you look at Italy and the history of Italy, Sparta, everything we say Spartan means today in English, if you say it's a Spartan, means it's exquisitely done, honed to perfection, trained to such an extent. So the Spartans were famous for warriors that were like super duper good, each one of them. And you will see that became the main thing. People were fighting with each other. And I don't call these people Kshatriyas, just like the Bhagavatam says. These are all fallen grade of Kshatriyas. They're not noble because they don't fight for the sake of dharma. That's when the culture of war completely changed. In Kurukshetra, people lump up in this world, they just look at everything as history. In Kurukshetra, you fought, wow. Luckily, Kurukshetra doesn't figure in history, accounted history. Kurukshetra war. Otherwise, how they will ever explain such a war of 600 million people dying? What a bloodshed. It may also be a watershed moment in the whole history because Bhagavad Gita was spoken. But the greater thing is the bloodshed, mutilated like nothing. So many people died. But if you compare that with all the other type of wars that people fought barbarically, the Germanic wars, barbarians invaded Rome and they finished Rome. Actually, they were so powerful. Yeah, they were so powerful. All these Germanic tribes, all Germany, and they were all, in terms of Bhagavatam, they were barbarians. No culture, no civilization, just weapons and killing each other. Small communities of people killing each other. But zoom out into Vedic times like Dhruva Maharaj. Everybody ruled under him. Parikshit Maharaj, he kept Kali away. These are all, which we're talking about, all these Roman tribes and all of them together, and even Indian history, Chandragupta Maurya and all that, in Ashoka also. Ashoka killed people. He was a deadly warrior. He killed some 70 of his brothers personally and came to the throne after his father passed away. It's not that he was a very peace-loving person at all. His whole life was checkered with killing of all sorts. So if you look into history, you'll see it's all killing people, human beings. So many wars, billions of people have died. No wonder when they study history and they come to know all that today, they feel very horrible. And they feel now that we are more civilized, at least we don't fight with each other. We may not fight with each other physically, but we are fighting with each other on social media, on the internet, and cyber crimes and this and that and biological weapons. The whole intention is still there. It has just changed into a different type. It's changed into a different type. War is now happening in the virtual world. It's become more ephemeral and more subtle and more powerful. So the tendency for war, if you want to change unnecessarily killing people, which is started from Kali Yuga's period started. Just before that was the Kurukshetra war. You can't title that as unnecessary killing. It was necessary killing, which Prabhupada says here also, you have to be violent where necessary to protect human society. And that was on a large scale protection because Krishna himself was involved and Dharma was set right and Pandavas were installed on the throne. And after that, over a period of time, again, Kali Yuga took over, and then craziness again descended. And this is what we see by war. Because I remember that I was in Italy, and not in Italy, in Australia. And one of those backpackers and woofers that we were preaching to in the farm in Australia, we were reading the Bhagavad Gita, and they were all new people, just playing with the guitar and singing songs, and once in a while coming up, and they were doing free service on the farm. But they were very interesting people, educated boys and girls from New York, from Iran, from all sorts of places. One boy, when we were reading the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, took great objection to the word Prabhupada has used, religious war. And he said, this is what it is I'm talking about. You guys are speaking Bhagavad Gita, etc., etc. And you say this is the word of God, but why is God encouraging this religious war? He compared it to the war of ISIS, and he compared it to the war in other historical. So people, they were a younger generation of people who were fried with all this history. And even the industrial revolution history, and with the type of people we have, and even with the millennials and their work culture and everything. So it's just an interesting group of people. So he couldn't accept the idea that there is something called a dharmic war. It's so ingrained in people, this influence of useless, unnecessary fighting and killing each other, which has come up as a main point nowadays in discussion. Why do you have a war? Why do people kill each other? For what? And what right have you got to kill innocent women, children, drop a bomb and kill them? Is there anybody to ask you? Are you accountable to anybody? Nations of people doing this. So that's a moral and ethical question coming up. Who are you to do this? Why do you do this to us? In the name of control, in the name of this. So actually society is a mess of questions and answers with nobody answering. But if you read the Bhagavatam and take this beautiful instance, you will see that there is room for everything. Plus, at the same time, everybody gets directed towards doing the right thing. And it's amazing that people who do wrong say, I'm sorry, I did wrong. I went off the track. This is human being, progressive human being. This is leadership. A leader, you will see Dhruva Maharaj agreeing, yes, I think I went off. I got unnecessarily angry. I have unnecessarily killed these people. And he did it in such a poignantly beautiful way that he made Swayambhu understand, I've understood your instruction. Thank you for giving me this instruction, putting me back on track. I have a great responsibility to execute because Krishna has personally asked me to perform this responsibility. I must be sensitive to it. And I don't want to wield power. I don't want to wield power for the sake of getting anything personally out of it. And looks like this seems something like that. That because my brother was killed by one Yaksha, I took it out on all the Yakshas. It's wrong. He openly agreed, and Swayambhu Manu counseled him. You see, these are world leaders getting counseled by very intelligent people. Brahma, Swayambhu Manu, Narada. These are all the people available for counseling. It's amazing. And that counsel is taken seriously. This is how system operates. Not that people did not make mistakes at all. They were like, boom, perfect and straight edge. No. They are bound to make mistakes. But the point is not about all these failures and mistakes. The point is about learning the lessons from it, taking the counsel, getting back and re-performing and doing a great job at it. So life is made of a meandering experience of good and bad and everything and averaging out in terms of a straight line of understanding, maturity, and execution. So this is the way we should understand this instance. These are some things that are put in randomly. So I will stop here, and if you have any questions, you may raise, and I can try to answer them for you. Right? Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Yes, Keshava Priya Madhavi Devidas.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, we learn in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam that even demigods are devotees with material desire, no Maharaj? What is the difference between them and Dhruva Maharaj in eyes of the Lord? Why is that Lord likes him more than those people, Maharaj? Because they are put in the material world only, no Maharaj, but Dhruva is valued more. He is given Vaikuntha, Loka also later. So what is that? Lord finds something different in Dhruva Maharaj.
Ananya Bhakti, that he has prioritized the aim, goal of life, Panchama Purushartha, Prema Pumarto Mahan. Love of Godhead is the topmost preference, priority, and goal of my life, and should be the goal of everybody, which is Krishna's direction. That has been prioritized by him. And therefore, he is known to be very different. Devotee, especially on the level of such surrender. Because you must remember that when Dhruva Maharaj saw the Lord, he rejected whatever he had wanted earlier. And he had completely decided that Swamin Kritartho Asmin Bharamna Yache. I have seen you and you have given me a darshan. Everything else, all of my desires are paled into insignificance. They don't hold any importance for me. Only you are important to me. That is very amazing priority. That is what happens to a devotee who experiences Krishna consciousness. So that is not the way demigods are. They recognize the Lord, you are God. Om Sahasra Sesha Purusha Sahasrakshas Sahasrapat Sabhumin Vishwato Bhratva Atyatishtat Dashangulam. Recognize you, you've got thousands of arms and thousands of legs, thousands of eyes, you're great, you're that, you're this, you are God. Recognize you, everything. Please help us with this situation here. What I want from God is a repair for the material situation I have. I am not willing to renounce fully everything in full devotional service to the Lord. That is not seen in demigods. That's not seen in demigods. It's a very interesting question that you've asked. Because people mistake Varnashrama to be the be-all and end-all. Varnashrama has to lead you to love of Godhead. In other words, religion is not everything. Religion should lead you to love of God. But simply being religious alone is not important. The fruit of religious performance is love, prema. If you miss that point, which mostly people do, then it's not that you have prioritized life properly. You have not understood the goal of life. This is an amazing conversation of Ramananda Rai and Lord Chaitanya, wherein he peels layer after layer in a very beautiful, someday we should be able to read that from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he shows what's the topmost goal of life. Lord Chaitanya makes Ramananda Rai speak it. So obviously different people at different levels. You may recognize God, but you may not surrender to him. You may recognize God and you may worship him for your material requirements. You may recognize God and you may desire that I want to surrender to him, and you may be in the process of that sadhana. You may recognize God, see him, and totally reject everything material like Dhruva Maharaj, but still be given a material situation as a devotional service to do, which you do. And there is a danger you may go this way, that way. That's also there. It happened to Brahma, happened to Dhruva, happens to everybody. Even great personalities it happens to. So all these things should be understood in that total context. The real goal of life for everybody which they should know and aspire for, is Prema Pumarto Mahan, love of God. It takes quite some time to actually deeply understand, because we have to also go through some experience in life, in devotional service, to be able to appreciate that. Right? That love of Krishna is the topmost. That the way the gopis and the gopas and every Vrajavasis practiced, that is the topmost goal to be achieved for any soul. So below that, you have a whole lot of gradation, right up to those who are just about liberated from any influence of matter in Brahman understanding, Aham Brahmasmi. From there onwards, the graph goes up to the topmost pinnacle. This is spiritual life. Below that graph of 0, coordinate of Brahman, down is material life. Is material life. Demigods come below that, actually. But in one sense, they are above that. Why? Because they recognize Krishna. They are devotees. They are directly on the path of making it zoom beyond the other lower levels of this thing and go to devotion in full. So these are opportunities. Like, we have opportunity, although we may not be calling ourselves liberated in the real sense of the word. Prabhupada said, if you're engaged in devotional service, you're already liberated. So although we may be in the material world, we are performing the activity of devotional service, which is what everybody is aspiring to be doing eternally, even while in the conditioned stage. And if you do it strictly, as per instructions from Guru and Krishna, you are as good as liberated. This is called Jivan Mukta. So all these different permutations and combinations of understanding are there. So right now you're comparing the demigods with Dhruva Maharaj and just trying to picture the whole scale, and you can place people in various levels according to those gradations and understand. Does it help you?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah. Any other question or comment? Any other question or comment? Okay. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj.